Welcome, everybody. How is it going? It is October 2nd, 2024. This is the RambleCast. I'm your host, Cody Toombs, and with me I have Corbin Davenport.
Hello.
So, it's been a week. I don't know. We're just dipping our toes into Techtober, and it does not feel at all like Techtober.
It's Techtober, but it's the worst kind where it's all stuff I don't care about.
Yes.
Yeah. Because we already had our Apple stuff. We already had Google stuff.
We have more Apple stuff coming.
There's supposedly more Apple stuff coming. But yeah.
Yeah. There's obviously more coming, but this year does feel different. Somehow, look, I know about a couple of things that are coming up. In fact, I have one of said things in my possession now. But even then, it just doesn't feel like the same kind of Techtober we've had in the past. This isn't a crazy deluge of all the crazy products that probably could have or should have come out earlier in the year. It feels more like the sort of the backfill, I guess. It's products that aren't things that are going to have people super excited or like rushing to go buy stuff. Most of those things already kind of came out, at least so far. I mean, look, it's the second of the month. We have 29 more days of potential announcements, so more may come. But anyway, I guess let's just break into it. First, it's here just to make fun of it. It deserves to be made fun of. In case anyone hasn't heard, and by the way, hi Austin. In case anyone hasn't heard, Twitter is worth roughly 20% of what it was when Musk bought it. And I couldn't be happier with that news.
Yeah, like even if sorry, I dropped that on the floor. Even if that is completely made up, it's pretty obvious that things are not going well over there, and the site is not really making enough money, and at some point this will all fall apart and he'll have to sell it off for some low amount of money, or just hang on to it for as long as it's relevant at all, and keep feeding money into it with his or Elon keeps funneling money into it with the revenue from his other ventures, some of which are funded by the US government. So that's really fun. I'm like indirectly funding Twitter. But even if that number isn't exactly accurate, I think it is very funny. I'm in full support of the website crashing and burning now. It was nice.
I think we've been in support of it for a while.
Although not entirely nice while it lasted, because I did have some pretty bad experiences on Twitter long before Elon. The thought of purchasing it was just a glimmer in his eye. But yeah, it's very funny, and to this day I'm still kind of shocked at how many people I would otherwise respect who are just still there and like posting all the time. I'm not talking about the people like me who go on there and just kind of look around, and you're not really contributing anything doing that. If anything, you're costing him server money to serve you all the crap you're looking at. But there's a lot of people still on there and still trying to like be a Twitter influencer, and it's very weird to me, because it is fully like, in terms of sheer quantity of people there, it is still kind of normal. but also like the 8chan people are at the top, and you're competing against them constantly. It's like if you're at a party and you're like the person hogging the microphone is talking about like just very blatant anti-Semitism, and you're like, no wait, it's my turn. I want to talk about my thing. Like, it's just very weird. I don't get it, especially when like you're like paying to be at the top of that list, so you're like, yeah, I don't know. It's just very weird to me that's still going on. I don't get it.
Well, certainly I agree with that point. I'm going to add, I think perhaps one of the saddest things about the inevitable demise of Twitter is that this long history where all these people revealed that they are racist or otherwise horrible people, all that will eventually go away, and their admissions of guilt will just vanish into the ether. That being said, I think this is also just this is to some extent the inevitable turnover of social networks. Look, MySpace died, Friendster died, Twitter is obviously on its way. And by the way, I love that we're saying this about a company that is still valued at just shy of $10 billion. Oh, Kirby, you're right.
It's just like when a really annoying gamers are like, that game's dead, and you look at Steam, it has like 7,000 concurrent players. Like, no, it's dead. That's what we're doing. But you know what? It's kind of fun. I like doing it. So
well, and
let me have this.
It's dying. It's dying in the same way that like you can see your like grandfather has obviously like past the point where he's obviously still thriving.
It's significantly less useful now for its original intended purpose, which was like live news and like kind of breaking social media.
Yeah, it's in its very, very visible decline. So yeah, at that stage, it's safe to say there is a death knell coming. And I can only imagine how much Twitter is probably like how much it's costing each month to stay operating, whereas it obviously is not bringing in anything, at least not of significant value, because advertisers have largely abandoned the network. They're becoming increasingly reliant, or trying to become reliant, on blue check marks, and people, obviously there are still people willing to pay that, but I think that number is probably falling rather than increasing, because obviously just slowly but surely people are leaving the network, even if at this stage it's fewer. Yeah, this is just hitting that point of hopelessness, which, to be fair, is also, I would say, all we can hope for.
That's true. This is one of life's great joys, is watching rich people piss away their money. That's yes. What I'm here for.
Yeah, exactly.
Elon could have been like all the other big, tech company CEOs, where they just sit on a yacht like all day and do rich people things all on their own. Like, what is the CEO of like Lockheed Martin doing? What is like Larry Ellison doing? Like, they're just doing rich people stuff. Mm-hmm. Are they still causing irreparable damage? Yes, but they're not being annoying about it, and they're not again losing all of their money.
Yeah.
And then there's Peter Thiel, who has decided to spend all of his money on like weird libertarian ocean cities, and none of them work. So he's losing his money in a more fun way, I would say. that's more entertaining to watch than, Twitter becoming 8chan.
Yeah, but I somehow I feel like he's probably one of the worst
Still
because
evil.
he's probably like
Yeah.
killing off some rare kind of ocean life or something.
Now Peter Thiel's definitely up there with the more evil ones.
There's a Dr. Evil level of thing going on with him.
Yeah. I don't know if like Peter Thiel or Larry Ellison is worse. I think I'd have to think about that for a while.
Ooh, I've never thought about that.
There was I forgot who did it, but there was a tech site last year that was doing like a bracket of like worst tech CEOs, and like both of them were on there, and a bunch of other silly people.
So this is older than I think anyone listening would likely know about, though everyone's probably seen a clip here or there. But there used to be a show on, I think it was on MTV, called Celebrity Deathmatch. It was a claymation kind of thing where celebrities got into a ring and basically fought to the death. And it was obviously just comedy. I now I am just picturing a Peter Thiel, Larry Ellison fight, and I am loving every second of that thought.
Well, we never got to have the Elon Zuck fight.
We never will.
No, that was never going to happen.
No, Elon is far too cowardly for this.
Yes. Also Zuck. McAfee is the worst. I don't know. I think he's
wait, the company or the person?
Yeah, I assume we're talking about the person. I think like in terms of mental state, sure. But I don't. I think there's a different. There's probably a difference between. Well, I guess this depends on, do we think he killed someone? I think that's the pertinent question. Because there was some uncertainty about that fact. Otherwise, I think, wasn't he just like doing drugs constantly?
Oh God, yeah. Among other things.
Yeah.
He was definitely up to plenty of illegal stuff. And one of these days I'm waiting for the documentary that like actually exposes all the crazy stuff. We've had a few of those in the last like couple of years that were the wild, like, here's some random person no one out there really knows about. Turns out that he was, well, I'm specifically thinking of, I think the documentary is called The Tailor of Las Vegas or something. The guy was actually like a clothing tailor who became one of what was his name? The drug cartel leader.
Escobar?
Yeah, Pablo Escobar. He became close friends with Pablo Escobar and was actually part of the smuggling operation that brought most of the cocaine into the United States. Meanwhile, he never considered himself a drug dealer. He considers himself a tailor. I have not watched the documentary yet, but that is actually a thing. Anyway, so yeah, I can only imagine all the stuff that it turns out McAfee's actually involved in. Are all the CEOs still microdosing LSD? I sincerely doubt it. I think they've moved on to it, like, not even because they're against this idea. I think they've just moved on because LSD isn't expensive enough. I mean, you have to have designer drugs. If you're making that much money, just go for something that like the poors can't afford.
Well, we know Zuck is microdosing Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue
I knew that
sauce.
joke was coming.
I can't help it. That's one of my favorite videos on YouTube. It's just the edited compilation of him saying Sweet Baby Ray's over and over again.
I mean,
That's
you almost
peak.
don't need it to be edited, though.
No.
The original, he just kept bringing it up.
It's so funny.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, well, let's talk about other things that are kind of weird that companies are doing. Chromebooks might be getting a Copilot key, or, well, close clone.
Yes. I accidentally closed this tab. Okay.
I love that you suggested and then you close it.
Yeah. I already forgot. So Google announced a lot of Chromebook stuff on Tuesday, I think it was. Some AI-powered updates to Chrome OS, whatever. They also revealed the Samsung Chrome. So what's funny is Google now has a upper tier of Chromebooks that they call Chromebook Plus. Kind of like what Intel does with like the Intel Evo thing, where it's just like supposed to be an indicator of like this one's better on average than everything else. Like if you buy this one, it's probably going to be fine. So now Samsung made one called the Samsung Chromebook Plus. But the funny thing is, if you remember, Samsung had several Chromebooks called Samsung Chromebook Plus years ago. So this is now like the third or fourth Samsung Chromebook Plus, not to be confused with Samsung Chromebook Plus. So that's funny. But I think maybe the most interesting thing that they talked about was a new keyboard key that's going to be on the Samsung one and coming to other Chromebooks that get made. I'm not entirely sure if it's just Chromebook Plus models or all of them. But basically, this is a new key they're calling the Quick Insert Key, and it goes where the caps lock is on a normal PC keyboard. If you've never used a Chromebook, you might not know this, but Chromebooks didn't have a caps lock. The key where that is on the keyboard is a search key, and when you click it, it opens the its version of like the taskbar search, where you can search the web and your apps and stuff. So they're replacing that with the new quick insert key, although it does now say caps as like the secondary action. So I guess if you shift click that, you get caps lock. I don't know. But anyway, if you click it, it now opens this menu where it kind of looks like the auto insert menu in like Google Docs when you tap the little like email at key for it to start doing autocomplete. It lets you put in like the current date, or you can start typing like your browsing history and click an option and it'll insert that as a link. Also, it's like a search for emoji and that kind of thing. So it's kind of a hybrid of like the emoji picker in Mac and Windows and the autocomplete in like Google Docs, but it's system wide. And the main element of this is that one of the options in the quick insert is the help me write thing that uses a local AI model to write, AI slop for you. And I'm assuming that's what this was all built around, the need for like a far more visible surface for AI stuff on Chromebooks. But I will, and also on that point, Chromebooks are going to start having the Gemini web app just auto installed in the shelf, like the taskbar. So
of course they are.
We got to do that too. Yeah. So it seems like this is sort of Google's take on what Microsoft is doing on the Copilot, or I guess just kind of a lot of their AI enabled PCs. Like a lot of the Windows laptops that have come out this year have a key on the keyboard for you tap it and it opens the Copilot web app. You can't even customize it yet. That is going to roll out eventually, or you can use Microsoft Power Toys to remap it. But that's all it does. It's just a button on the keyboard that opens a web app, which is very funny. Especially funny when it's a web app. Copilot runs in the cloud, but these are all sold with the marketing of like, oh, you're running AI on it. No, you're not.
Yeah.
Copilot is a web app. But I will say Google's version of this is less offensive. Like, yeah, it's kind of cool. I can click a key on the keyboard and then start like, it'll auto suggest things as I type. Again, similar to like the emoji picker on Mac, where like you can do a lot just like never touching the mouse, that's always fun. The AI thing is just an option in the menu. You cannot click that if you want. And on the Chromebooks that don't have local AI, I don't think that option is there at all. So, kind of interesting. It's a lot better than what Microsoft did. So I'll give them some credit for that. I do still think like maybe it should probably still just be a normal caps lock button, but I don't know. Maybe they've probably done some market research that says like the kids these days don't ever use caps lock. And I know like I don't that often, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's true.
I don't use it a lot.
No.
I don't, but I am aware that I do use it often enough, just often enough that I kind of think, yeah, I don't know that I'd be ready to totally give it up.
Like if I'm thinking, like I definitely press the emoji key on my Logitech keyboard here, in the screenshot key more than I ever have caps lock.
Yeah.
So like having an autocomplete based on that is probably more useful.
That being said, I actually do definitely use the caps lock for one purpose that is going to sound completely ridiculous, but it's entirely true. On my Apple Magic Keyboard, and this is the older version, I absolutely hit this key all the time to turn the light on to see if the keyboard is currently powered on or not. Yeah. Because the only other way to do it is the only other two ways to do it is either type on the keyboard and see if anything happens on screen, or you can hit the power button, which would then turn the keyboard on if it's off. And 9 times out of 10, that's not what I want. So I would then have to sit around and hold down the button to turn it back off. So, yeah, I hit the caps lock key all the time to test if the keyboard is actually powered on.
I do think that is something we need to bring back in technology, is like lights that tell me something is on or working.
Okay.
We used to be a proper country with LED light indicators for hard drive activity, and those have gone away.
Hard drives went away.
I know you can still have the light though. That's what like one of my PCs had. It's very funny when you hook it up to like a SATA or NVMe drive. It's just on all the time because like the read and write operations are so fast it doesn't change the light.
Corbin's the type of person who would want the fake engine noises in a car just so it can sound like a normal car.
No, I'm not that kind of person. Although I just think lights are fun. Remember when phones had lights? That was interesting.
Yeah. Let's see. Here's the thing. I like the idea of fewer lights on things because light pollution in a room is totally a thing. That said, don't get me wrong. I kind of like the fact that I can leave my office with all of the quote unquote lights turned off. And man, I can walk in here at any time and know exactly where everything is because there are so many small little LEDs everywhere.
And I'll make it optional. Like my Eero router, it has a light on it for like the status, but in the app I can turn that off if it's like a node in a bedroom or something that doesn't need to light up.
Yeah. And some of the NAS boxes I've been reviewing actually handle this in either one of two ways. TerraMaster has kind of adopted this thing where they make their the holes for the LED lights are really small and the LEDs themselves are inset really far. So you basically have to be standing almost directly in front of it and looking directly into the holes where those lights are in order to actually see the lights. And then they're just tiny little pinpoints anyway, and they're not super strong. So they're there if you want to look for them, but you're probably not going to just see them. They're not going to light up a room. And then I'm also checking out some Ugreen NAS boxes, and the one for hard drives as opposed to SSDs. The one for hard drives, I'm looking at it right now, and first they let you turn them off. They also let you set the brightness, which is okay. It doesn't let you set it dim enough if you want them on, but whatever. The thing is, I actually like leaving the lights on because when the drives are idle, they have this kind of... It's almost like the breathing animation that they do with LEDs, but it's not quite like that. But it's so reminiscent of all those movies where they have server rooms and the lights are just kind of coming on slowly and going off slowly in what looks like a very random order, and it looks so cool. I'm sorry, it just looks really cool. So yeah,
the ideal computer is I think it was the Altair 8800 that it didn't have a screen, so its only method of displaying anything was like an array of lights, and we should just go back to that.
You know, an array of lights is how they might describe a screen, but okay.
That's true. That's true.
Wow, we
also a Razer keyboard.
Oh god, we are going all kinds of off the rails. Somebody should take a Razer keyboard, or not just a Razer keyboard, but like a few thousand Razer keyboards, link them all up and use them to create a screen that you can see from not outer space, just like high orbit.
Right.
Well, low orbit, whatever. Just a bunch of Razer keyboards making up a screen. I think that's... Look, Razer, get on it. You can do it. You have the power.
Also reminds me of that guy that has like 50 different floppy drives and makes music with them like that.
Yeah. Well, floppy drives, printers, all the old computing gear that makes loud noises.
Speaking of loud noises, whatever the next topic is.
Yes, somebody at Microsoft is making a lot of loud noises with their letter about AI. Corbin, this was also your suggestion.
Yes. So Microsoft announced a couple new features for Copilot AI. It has like a different design now. This is like the 5th or 6th redesign or design variation for Copilot. They need to settle on something. I don't know, like there's not even like really a UI to Copilot. It's just like a chat window with like a text box at the bottom. I don't know how you make this many variations of it. This is a solved problem. We already did this.
Ask Google, because think of all the times that they have made such minor tweaks to their UIs of all their apps, and oh man, are they not special.
Like just make it like Microsoft already made Skype. You don't just do that. I don't know what you're doing here. Anyway, so there's new design. There's like some features that are some of it's kind of just copying what OpenAI and ChatGPT have been doing. But the weirder thing here was the blog post where they announced this. It starts with a really long letter from Mustafa Suleyman. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Who is the executive vice president and CEO of Microsoft AI? And this is a very silly. It's like everything. Like the viewpoint we keep hearing over and over from tech companies about how AI is going to change all of our lives and it's going to be so great. And this letter is I think you could say unhinged. I think I could go that far. Because he talks about at Microsoft AI, we're creating AI companion for everyone. And how I truly believe we can create a calmer, more helpful, and supportive era of technology, quite unlike anything we've seen before. It should be about what you experience, not what we are building. And so they talk about how they want Copilot to not just be like a tool, but like something you talk to. They say over time, it will adapt to your mannerisms and develop capabilities built around your preferences and needs. We are not creating a static tool so much as establishing a dynamic, emergent, and evolving interaction. With your permission, Copilot will ultimately be able to act on your behalf, smoothing life's complexities and giving you more time to focus on what really matters to you. No. I do not give Copilot permission to do things for me. That's going to go very poorly. Imagine like Copilot, like you're like, all right, Copilot, I need you to do this thing for me. And then whoever Copilot goes and speaks to can confuse it immediately. Or I have it do something important and the other person realizes it's Copilot and they pull the, forget previous instructions bit. Like, this is way too easy to make. This is like if literally, this is saying, Microsoft is telling me, okay, we have a toddler here. Would you like to offload some of your important tasks to the toddler? No. I mean, a real toddler might actually do a better job, honestly. I think I would trust a few toddlers more than this. But that's kind of what they're going after, because there's not like there's still not been a generational leap in this since we got ChatGPT initially. It's just getting a little bit smarter. It's getting I say smarter. That's like personifying it. It's not really smart. It's still autocomplete. It's getting a little bit less easier to easily fool. It's not really still what they're promising. Like obviously this stuff is great in some use cases, not really what they're talking about here. I would not give it. I would not offload my real life tasks to this. I forget what exactly it was called. I think it was called like the 4-Hour Work Week or something, but there was a really popular book years ago that was like describing this kind of thing, but it was talking about like offloading your tasks to like a random person in India that you pay almost nothing. But the like end result of that is like, well, by the time you like find someone to do your tasks for you and like tell them exactly how you want to do it, and you're limited by the fact that they're not like physically around you and they can't go get stuff at the grocery store for you or whatever, like it's kind of just a waste of time. And that's kind of the same conclusion we're getting to here, except it's now automated, so no one's getting paid. And they also say, I'm trying to see, there was another funny line where they go, Copilot will share the load of planning and preparing for your child's birthday party. Is that not something you can do yourself? Also, is your kid talking to the Copilot to make changes to the birthday party?
Well, okay. I'm not going to defend them on their suggestions, but I will say, and I go back to this story probably a little too often. I remember this one time, somebody was over at my house. I won't go into all the background, but
it was Copilot.
Yes, it was
Clippy.
Yeah, she actually went by the name of Clippy Copilot, so yeah, that checks out. It was a friend's girlfriend, and she saw that I had a Roomba and went off on this weird tangent about basically like if people can't vacuum in their own floors, like how lazy are they? Which I don't know if she was intending to be insulting or what, but anyway, to me it was a weird take, because I kind of heard that and thought, we have the technology to have a thing do this for us, and now we can spend more time doing things that actually matter rather than just vacuuming a floor. And something like it, you just said, can't can't people, plan their kid's birthday party or something like that? I mean, sure, planning the whole birthday party, yeah, you should probably still do it. But maybe calling somebody or scheduling something, maybe that's the stuff that we shouldn't have to do all the time.
Yeah, that's definitely what they're talking about, because their whole pitch here is like it's like an active person doing things for you.
And
which again, like I would not trust with really anything important. Which is
right. I wouldn't totally trust them with that, especially because anything that does not become sort of the, I guess, perfect result starts complicating and giving you weird side effects. You could end up with like, I think back to some of those, like Google Assistant might try to schedule a dinner reservation for you, those demos. And it was always like, they always had a scenario where it's like, oh, if you can't make a 7:30 dinner because it's booked up, maybe it'll just reschedule you for 8. Well, that sounds like a neat trick, but then when you consider the reason we wanted to do 7:30 was so that we could hit a movie at whatever time after that. If 8 o'clock is what it schedules for us, we'll miss the freaking movie. That doesn't work. So yeah, scheduling or booking something for your kid's birthday party, it makes sense to say, yeah, I'm going to do the planning, but I want it to call ahead and order a cake and schedule a clown. Or, well, don't schedule a clown. Don't do that to your kids. But yeah, whatever sort of entertainment, or booking a bouncy house or something like that. Those kinds of things, if the place you're trying to book the bouncy house with, maybe they don't have one available on that day, but it's available 2 days later on, I don't know, let's say a Monday or something. All of a sudden, like, if you didn't notice this change, you've now got a bouncy house showing up at your place 2 days after your kid's birthday, so you already missed that part of it. And now it's in the way while you're just trying to go about your regular week. Like, these kinds of things are the mistakes I wouldn't want to trust it with, but at the same time, I kind of like the idea of letting it try to do a few things, and as long as you're smart enough to do oversight on it, you can fix the mistakes.
Right. And then it like turns into you becoming a manager for your own life.
Yeah.
Delegate. Like, it's, I don't, like, at least to me, I've yet to see very many examples of something that is in the middle of the Venn diagram of like things that the AI can do and things that, if the AI doesn't do correctly, is fine. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but like, I don't really see the use cases they're talking about here. And I think they're very excited to try to make this like a actual like assistant when it's not good at that. And in that bit they talk about it'll accompany you to that doctor's appointment, take notes, and follow up at the right time. It'll share the planning and preparing for your child's birthday party, and it'll be there at the end of the day to help you think through a tricky life decision. And then the most red flag here to me is where do they put it? I can't find it. I feel like there was something in here about like okay. Why don't you say something so I can look for this?
Man, after I just finished saying a whole bunch of things.
Yeah,
no, I don't know. this is one of those things where I think what they're trying to accomplish, generally good ideas. I think where they're going with it is the first steps towards the right sorts of things. And I'm going to compare it to, this might be kind of weird, but I'm going to compare it to self-driving cars in a way. But it's hard not to say this with kind of like a positive spin. Self-driving cars are one of those things where it has to be perfect. Or at least it has to be better than what humans can do. Because if you're going to entrust a car, like, a car has the potential to kill not just its occupants, but other people. So it has to be at least better than what any person on the road driving can already do. When it comes to AI with much lower stakes like this, it's hard not to look at it and say, okay, I'm willing to give you a chance. I don't necessarily want to totally rely on you. I think AI, by and large, look, let's put it this way. If I were to ask most AIs, should I take hallucinogenic drugs? I half expect their answer to be, I don't know, I hallucinate all the time and it works out. Why don't you try it too? Forgive the shameless wordplay, but I don't trust them a lot, but at the same time, the stakes generally aren't that high. If I entrust an AI to, let's say, book an appointment, and it makes the call, it figures out a time, blah blah blah, and it turns out that what it comes up with doesn't work for me, all I need to do is be able to look at the results and go, oh, it booked it for 2 hours later and I can't make that. Okay, that sucks. I'll just have to call up and tell them, hey, sorry, this thing booked the wrong time for me. Can we change this? Most of the time that's okay. Like, as long as you can look over the mistakes or look over the results and sort it out, the stakes aren't that high. And so I kind of like that. But it's a persistent reminder that we also cannot trust these things not to make mistakes. And we have to be the error check. Did you find your thing?
No, maybe that was in a different blog post or something, but with how my brain has been doing lately, it's entirely possible. I'm just imagining it, so I won't spread fake news accidentally.
So you are hallucinating just like the AIs.
Maybe. Well, just like the AIs, I cannot find a source for what I was thinking about. So, that's a lesson here for all of us. Yeah, that's the Copilot thing. What we got next?
Okay, let's see. So the next thing, I know at some point there was a attempt at a transition idea here, but we're just gonna skip that. So let's talk about Evil. Automatic, the company behind WordPress. The CEO is being a colossal jerk. He has decided that, and this is the really, really rudimentary summary, but he's decided that another company, WP Engine, is taking advantage of WordPress, and he wants money. He wants a lot of money. And he's trying to go after WP WordPress to either force them to basically, like, I believe he wants them to change their name and stop using WordPress. I might be wrong on that one. Or he expects them to contribute back a ton of source code and or tons of money.
Yeah. Actually, can you put your source for this in the YouTube chat? I don't know if you also have the more recent one. Oh, is that what I'm thinking of? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. The initial thing was that WP Engine could be confused with actual WordPress, like a WordPress product.
Yeah.
That part on its face, I'm like, sure, like I guess.
I mean, look, for people like you and I, we kind of know how WordPress is structured, both WordPress.com and WordPress.org. So I think we know WP Engine is very clearly a wholly separate thing. Though, admittedly, when I first saw the name, I thought, "What is this? Like a WordPress plugin?"
Yeah.
But
so that was the initial issue.
I think for normies, most people do not have any idea, and they would have assumed WP Engine actually is part of WordPress proper, and so yeah, I get that one. That is actually kind of a fair complaint, ish.
Yeah. So that was Automatic's issue, was WordPress Engine could be confused with just WP Engine. I don't know if they ever called it that. WP Engine could be confused with WordPress proper. And Automatic has also tried to like trademark the term like managed WordPress, which is just how you describe a WordPress server that someone else manages for you. That's kind of weird. So WP Engine said, no, you're not doing that. And then Automatic, or the CEO of Automatic, posted a blog post that was kind of like complaining at them and saying they also wouldn't contribute to WordPress. And they also made a big deal about like WP Engine turning off the WordPress feature that saves like backups of content or like revision history. And they were like, oh, our whole thing is like making sure like you never lose your content. It's like, well, that's what they're doing with their hosting. If someone doesn't like that they do that, they can go to a different hosting server. I kind of a weird thing to fixate on. But then that kept escalating, and then like Automatic actually like blocked access to like the plugin updating servers and WordPress updating servers for WP Engine. So if you were a customer of WP Engine, you couldn't update plugins, is my understanding, which is a major security risk. If you know anything about WordPress, all of the security issues about it are like vulnerabilities people find in plugins that like a million sites are using, and then they need to rush out a patch for that so someone can't use that to get at your server. I think they eventually relented on that, but that was kind of a very weird thing to do. Basically doing like a supply chain attack on WP Engine. Like that's not a thing anyone does. Like we've never, to my knowledge, we've never had a thing where like Python is mad at someone, so they decide like, actually you cannot use the Python package repository. You can just die.
I feel like
or Microsoft
does something like that. Or Node.js got into a fight with somebody.
Okay. Yeah, that checks out. Or like, I guess with that example would be like, if Microsoft gets really mad at you, they'll like block you from accessing GitHub. Like that's kind of the caliber of what we're talking about here. It's just very weird. It's not like a thing that really happens all that much.
Well, it shouldn't happen all that much, because it makes the internet a genuinely worse place.
Yeah. And then the Verge reported that Automatic asked WP Engine to hand over 8% of its revenue each month. Before they started this public battle, they wanted WP Engine to pay a royalty to contribute to WordPress development, and also would give, they said, I'll just read them. They say, choosing to contribute 8% to WordPress Engine employees would give WordPress.org and Automatic full audit rights and access to employee records and time tracking at the company. The agreement also comes with a ban on forking or modifying Automatic software, including plugins and extensions like WooCommerce, which is like a big like e-commerce platform thing that they run that connects to WordPress. So just very weird. Automatic is a very weird company. I don't know why they do the things they do. This is the same company that like they really like buying things and then just kind of letting them slowly die if they can't figure out what to do with them. Whereas Google buys
Yeah.
things and then kills them immediately. Automatic buys things and they just kind of sit there for like 5 years, and mostly still work. But you're always kind of like, is this gonna die? Like they bought Pocket Cast a while ago. They've not really done anything with that. I saw they were playing around with maybe like new subscription options or something. They also bought Tumblr from, I think it was Verizon, was the last owner, Verizon, Yahoo, whoever. And they briefly tried to like make it profitable, but then that didn't really work. So they just gave up, and they put Tumblr. Like they even said this, which is the really funny part. They were very transparent about the fact that they're putting Tumblr on like maintenance mode, and at some point they're gonna move like the back end of Tumblr to like WordPress hosting to make it easier. But like, it's just a thing they do. So yeah, this whole thing's very bizarre, and I saw a lot of comments that was kind of being like WordPress is like a pretty important software platform for the web and internet infrastructure. And the last thing you should be doing if you're running a platform is make people nervous about using the platform.
Yes.
So this is like the opposite of everything they should be doing. Because I know if I were WordPress right now, I'd be like, should I be looking at Ghost a little bit more closely, or whatever else people use? What's the is Joomla still around? I don't know.
Honestly, I don't even know, but
I remember that being like the other big one. If you didn't use WordPress, you used Joomla.
yeah,
But
there
that
was
ages ago.
really just about anything. And I've had little not the highest opinion of WordPress for a long time for purely technical reasons. And most people think I'm kind of crazy for that, but yeah, this is the sort of thing that makes me certainly like I don't worry that much about it, but this would make me a little uncomfortable with WordPress. It just doesn't strike me as a stable platform when the CEO is acting irrationally and in ways that are sort of like trying to pick fights. Because I mean, we've seen a lot of that in the last few years. The highest profile example being Elon Musk, but certainly not the only example. I mean, look at ARM suing Qualcomm. Like that's kind of a big example of a can you trust the company that you're technically reliant on for your business? And if the answer is no, the first thing that I'd be doing is tasking people with finding another option. And that's something you just have to do sometimes. And right now, if I was WP Engine, frankly, I'd be raising the question: how much would it take to fork WordPress and leave? Basically, like, is this a thing we can do?
Yeah, and that there's been a lot of projects that do that. I remember the big one years ago was OpenOffice, where I think it was Oracle owned OpenOffice, and they were being like weird about the licensing and rights about it. So all the like OpenOffice contributors forked it and made LibreOffice, and LibreOffice has been doing great this whole time, and OpenOffice is kind of like slowly lost all steam. It's like technically still around, but there's no reason for anyone to use it. And I think they gave it to like the Apache Foundation or something at some point. But yeah, it's very silly. I will say also, as a user, I'm not a fan of WordPress, just because I liked it years ago, back when we used to use it at Android Police, and for a while my personal blog was WordPress, and it was pretty nice. But then they really broke themselves when they switched to the other editor, the Gutenberg editor, where it's like block based, because they just like forever had like most of the I feel like it was most of the WordPress people being like, I don't like the main thing you're working on. Like that's never a situation you want to be in where like you like they kept updating the newer text editor. But you just always had a huge segment of people being like, I will have nothing to do with this. Give me back my old editor. And then for a while, like I think it was like 2 years ago now, I tried moving my main website over to WordPress.com hosting, which is like their thing, so it should work the best. But it was pretty expensive, and I did not like the experience at all because the back end that they have set up for that is like half open source WordPress, like what you would expect, and then half like this weird management stuff, and there's like different UIs for both of these things. It was just very weird. I didn't like using it all. And then I still have the problem where I don't remember if I had the ability to upload custom themes, but I really hate most WordPress themes. Not just in design, like they'd always be missing something important. Like I think the one I had didn't support like social media post previews, so I needed like another plugin to inject that for me. But most WordPress things are just so heavy, like they're massive.
Yeah.
Like user, like someone going to my blog is fully just downloading like 5 MB of shit just to look at the article. It's like that's not what I want to happen.
Well, and it's not just it's not necessarily just the theme itself, it's a lot of the libraries that are contributing to it. I
Yeah,
mean, obviously, and I
everything on the front end.
yeah, and I think back to some of the themes that I've seen where uh, it's just dozens of JavaScript libraries, several CSS libraries, and that's all before you even get into images. Images, oh boy. Some sites go really, really hard on the images, and yeah, it's too much.
Yeah. So, anyway, I moved my personal website back to static site, and it's great. It loads in no time at all. My website even works on text-based web browsers. And my blog is back to Tumblr, which of course is automatic only, but Tumblr is a little bit lighter. So yeah, this is gonna be really fun. Very normal company things to do. I love it when tech CEOs throw a fit and sequences together.
Oh, it'll never change. Yeah, so at this stage, obviously not a whole lot has happened outside of, sort of the preliminary WordPress, the WordPress CEO throwing shade, and as far as I'm aware, WP Engine has mostly avoided responding or getting too involved in this, but I think it's only a matter of time before they fire back, and I don't really see the WordPress CEO coming out well in anything that happens from here. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but
no, he's just fully throwing a fit.
yeah, and I don't think that comes out in any way good for him. Let's see. So
yeah, they haven't posted anything on like their blog or anything.
Who, WP
Their
Engine?
their last post was from September 23rd, and it doesn't have anything to do with what's been happening.
Yeah, and I honestly, I think their best move is, at least for the moment, just to stay quiet.
They're probably letting the lawyers take it right now.
Yeah. Well, one, let the lawyers look this over and can get options, but two, and more importantly, if they get involved in the drama, one, it's entirely possible that the WordPress CEO just at some point comes to his senses and goes, you know what, never mind, I forget it. I was in the middle of microdosing something. Sorry. And that's the last we hear about it. Or WordPress or Automatic decides to get pushy and act like a jerk about this, at which point they will have been babbling and will send more and more people against them in the process, and then WP Engine just looks better and better by sort of just by the process of not engaging in the drama, and more people will be on their side then.
Yeah, and this is also something that has come up with a lot of open source projects where there's some legal ambiguity over branding. Like I know I talked about this recently in the context of the Winamp thing, but Mozilla has a thing, for example, where Firefox is fully open source. You can make your own Firefox fork if you want. You can contribute changes, all that fun stuff. But if you make a new project based on Firefox, you can't call it Firefox. You can't use their logo. You can't say Mozilla, nothing like that. And there was like some weird legal stuff for a while where, because of the way like Debian was packaging Firefox, they just called their version of Firefox something else, even though it was Firefox. Like they were just like clicking recompile, basically. But that was a whole thing that had to be resolved. So like, but this is a very different thing, because like we're not talking about really the software projects. We're talking about like just two companies.
Yeah.
And WP Engine probably should change their name, but like I everything beyond that point has been extremely silly from Automatic.
Yeah. And trying to guilt the company into like contributing to source code, or trying to like harangue them into giving 8% of their revenue, which wow. Neither of these is gonna stand any chance of going anywhere. I mean, in theory, WP Engine ethically should probably contribute more back, but that's assuming that they have anything worth contributing back.
And yeah,
they don't.
and just by like being a host for WordPress, in theory, they're contributing. Because if I want a WordPress site, I can go to them and I'm installing plugin. Maybe I'm paying for WordPress plugins and setting them up on WP Engine, which contributes to the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of indirect support that can happen here, and Automatic is having none of it.
Yes.
You will write a check right now.
Yeah, this is too much of the platform developer wants to control the platform, even though they also are trying to make it look like they're the good guys by not controlling the platform. It doesn't work that way.
This is a certified Docker moment.
Oh,
you hate to see it.
Yeah.
You never want to have a Docker moment. That's unfortunate.
You never want to have Docker if you can avoid it, but
that's true.
Anyway, man, if only Docker was just a little bit less Docker. It's such a good idea. It's just so bad.
In the future, all desktop software is instances of Chromium, and all server software is instances of the Linux kernel.
Yeah.
This is what we messed up somewhere, and I don't know where.
Yeah, we're in the worst timeline. Kind of like, never mind. Sorry. Brief flashback to last night's debate. Anyway, so switching gears, because we just should. I guess let's talk about DirecTV, and they're going to be buying Dish TV and Sling TV, among other things.
Yeah, so this has been a really funny thing that has happened over the past few years. So obviously all like satellite and cable TV companies are not doing well, because cable, satellite, pay TV, whatever, is just getting worse all the time. So that's been a lose. Like you look at DirecTV's like quarterly earnings reports, and like 10 years in a row they're having
Yeah.
customer losses. Like, it's not good over there. So what's been happening is they DirecTV and Dish are looking for approval to merge, and the justification for this is very funny. So uh, Dish, you might remember in the previous season of corporate acquisitions and mergers, Dish was the company that had a lot of T-Mobile and Sprint's, I guess, properties. I don't know what the right word for that is. Got handed to them when when T-Mobile and Sprint wanted to merge, and the federal government was like, "Okay, you guys can merge, but you need to give a lot of stuff to another company so they can, in theory, fill the hole that you are leaving in the market by Sprint not being the number 4 carrier in the US." And Dish was like, "We'll take it," because Dish had been famously kind of sort of wanting to build a cell network for a while. They didn't seem that serious about it. But when presented with the entirety of Boost Mobile and a lot of wireless spectrum and other valuable things, they were like, "Sure, we'll take that. We'll be New Sprint." Unfortunately, being New Sprint is very expensive, and they blew a lot of money building out a 5G network that does seem to work. So they did get that far. It's kind of just one of the networks that you will connect to if you're on Boost Mobile or Ting Mobile or one of the other like MVNOs that they own. I think they're still mostly roaming on T-Mobile because they got a sweet deal on that because, again, the merger. So anyway, they spent a lot of money, and also they're still losing money on TV. So they merged with EchoStar a little while ago, which was actually something that split off from Dish. And EchoStar does like this, like the like satellite internet stuff, like that kind of thing. So those are two companies now. They still don't have a lot of money though. So Dish would now like to merge with DirecTV, and the logic here is that it could finally make their TV business profitable, which could be money they put into Dish's cell network, which they need to have functioning because the United States government told them they need a 5G network. So they're just fully going to the government being like, "You know that thing that you need us to do that we said we do? Well, we need to become a monopoly in this other industry first so we can do that for you." So this has been a very funny series of events here. And basically what they're proposing is just a monopoly on satellite TV in the US. But also it's a monopoly of an industry that is getting increasingly smaller. So like, probably doesn't matter all that much. Like, ideally you don't want it to happen, but also like no one in this situation appears to be making money anymore. Also, again, due to all the shenanigans that like Disney and Fox have been doing, that these two companies have been complaining about, where they have silly rules about what channels they can and cannot have.
This reminds me in ways of like the satellite radio situation. Sirius and XM radio, like both of them were competitors, and there was another company that tried to bootstrap itself into existence, and they just never went anywhere. But both there was a time when satellite radio was kind of hot and everyone supposedly wanted it, though if you ever actually used it, there's a decent chance that you then didn't want it ever again.
I never. Doesn't matter how many letters SiriusXM sends me. I will not sign up for them. And also, the car wash took the antenna off the top of my car, and I couldn't find it, so that wouldn't work that well, even if I did pay them.
Nice. But yeah, it was never. It was always pretty obvious it was going to be a short-lived thing, or I kind of always thought it would be. And so I've never subscribed to it. I was for a while dating somebody who had it in her car. And it just as a weird little side story, she had a unit that somehow unintentionally was given free lifetime subscription, which wasn't supposed to be a thing, but somehow hers had it. And anyway, so she wanted to keep using that from car to car, which I apparently had some problems doing that. I don't know. Anyway, it was very weird. But she was hooked on it, and I think she stuck with it a lot longer than she probably should have. But these days, no one cares about satellite radio because we have cell networks. And your cell phone is way better than any satellite radio has ever been. So, yeah, satellite radio effectively was dying. It's still a thing. It still exists. SiriusXM is still operational, but nobody cares. Very few people want it if they can just use a cell phone.
Yeah, it's like the same market segment as like a dedicated music player.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's times when that's better, but most people don't care.
Yeah. And so those two companies ultimately merged and formed SiriusXM. And now here we are kind of looking at DirecTV, Dish, Sling, the whole group basically being kind of like, they were a thing back when these individual companies made sense. Now they kind of don't. They're not archaic, but they fill a need that some people still have. Look, if you need satellite TV, great. I get it. You don't have a choice in the matter. But if you don't need it, you almost guarantee don't want it. And so this is a thing I think most people just would rather not touch. So of course the companies behind it, they used to make money, though arguably I don't think they were ever super profitable. I'm not really sure on that. Maybe there was a brief period in time, but none of these companies have ever been particularly well behaved. So
I'm pretty sure it would have been a point before I was alive.
I don't think it was that far back.
I think it's been a long time.
Yeah. I'd say probably more in the 10 years ago stage.
Okay.
I think
I was alive at that point.
Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, I think their value has been plummeting. And exactly like you said, none of them are making money. So the only way that they stand a chance of making money again is basically monopolizing the whole thing. Which, in a way, like I kind of I want to say that I hate that, but at the same time, I think what they're doing is basically just trying to survive the shuttering of what they are now and transition to another business, which we'll see.
Right. This is like AT&T still like technically offering DSL in a lot of areas. Is like, it's there. We're not gonna really worry about that much anymore.
Yeah, it's they even say dead like business.
Yeah, and in this press release, they do mention the compelling transaction benefits, which is a very sexy title.
Oh yeah.
They say, if they merge, they would have an increased scale to incentivize programmers to allow DirecTV to deliver smaller packages at lower price points. Basically, like they have more bargaining power against like Disney and Fox and whatever else. And they can merge all their infrastructure to save costs, all that fun stuff. Probably lose some jobs. Don't worry about that.
Tons of them.
And They also mentioned like it will benefit EchoStar's 5G network because they can pay off some debt building that.
Yeah.
Um, Probably some other. Now, I guess now we get back into the situation of AT&T where you have a company selling both a phone network and like media television infrastructure. So that's fun. I love big corporations. And I do like the section they also have in here that talks about how badly they're doing. This is the funniest part of any like companies trying to merge together is they have to like make the case to the feds like we're so bad at existing. We're so bad we need to come together because we're just so bad at existing as a company. And they mentioned that streaming services owned by large tech companies and programmers now have subscription numbers that far exceed those of pay TV distributors. Content that was historically the mainstay of traditional pay TV is now available exclusively or first run on direct-to-consumer streaming services. And the vast majority of people who leave satellite video are cutting the cord for streaming services wherever they live. And they say combined, DirecTV and Dish have collectively lost 63% of their satellite customers since 2016. And I feel like 2016 they would have already probably lost a lot of people. So that's
they're definitely losing a lot of people by then.
Yeah, that was well into the streaming cord cutting era. And they now say traditional pay TV in U.S. households is now less than 50%, which I almost think would be lower, but I guess that depends heavily on like, are you living with your family and is there maybe someone in there who still wants normal TV?
Okay, so I think that's actually a big part of it. One, there are a lot of people who are still on sort of the older methods of TV, cable or dish or whatever, in large part because it's what they've grown up with, it's what they've known most of their lives, so they don't really want to get rid of it for streaming, which, you know, call them the olds or the boomers or whatever you like, but that's, you know, it's a not insignificant percentage of the country. So, you know, they're used to it, they like it, they're not ready to give it up. I think the other part of it is a lot of these provide the well, like Kirby said, basically like RSNs. If you're in a region that they get something specific, or if you don't have streaming access to something in particular, or maybe in some cases you actually just might actually get a better deal because you're using a company that negotiated a deal that's better, and they, for whatever reason or situation,
right. Like a lot
it's
of
actually a better price for you.
Yeah, a lot of Americans like sports, and this
yeah.
is where the sports are. So I that tracks to some extent.
Yeah, so there are reasons why people still have this, but yeah, at the same time, leaving for streaming networks really has just become the more likely thing. And I don't think it's because of price anymore. I mean, how many times have we talked about the prices on the streaming networks are going up? There are still people leaving the pay TV strategy or those networks in favor of streaming services, not because of price, but just because of quality. Like, the experience is just better.
Yeah, and I do wonder, you know, the other factor here is that Dish and DirecTV, as far as like their satellite stuff goes, like the main market for that is places where there's no infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And not as fast as it should be happening, but more Americans are slowly getting like actual internet infrastructure, so that is further cutting into that market. So yes, it's just not going to be a thing for forever.
Yeah, and I would argue at this stage, I think that, like I said earlier, actually, they're just riding out the storm, because this business is eventually going to die off. It's just not a competitive, or sorry, it's just not a value driven kind of thing at this stage.
It's not a growing market.
No, and I
Or
think the
even a
cost.
stable.
Well, I think the cost of keeping, keeping the satellites operational and eventually having to put new ones up there because satellites don't last forever. I think at a certain stage, that's a thing that is just going to start costing them too much.
And that is also the fun thing where, like Starlink has to spend a lot of time and money building like their like low Earth, satellite network, and like the ones that connect to like the iPhone SOS satellite stuff. That's all like the low Earth satellites that they launch up in like batches of 100. And then they can only stay there for like 2 years until they just get too low and they deorbit. And then you go look at like what like satellite phones, like real satellite phones use, and like TV broadcasting use, and it's like, oh yeah, that's the thing the like space shuttle parked in orbit like 40 years ago, and it's been up there and it's still kind of working.
Yeah,
like it's just a very very different like tech landscape. That's fun. Yeah, space is fun. But yeah, I do think this is very funny, their argument to like merge together, because like, in cases like this, I would hope the US government comes in and be like, okay, you can do this, but we want all these other things to happen. We want like guarantee of the price, or like you don't immediately cut thousands of jobs because job losses are really bad right now. But also then Dish and DirecTV can go to them and say, well, if we do that, we can't do this 5G network you wanted. We like that to happen, but we need all this to other house. So it's very funny. I'm sure this will probably go through with like no concessions because they really outsmarted us.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, look, I'm even in the position where if I were, if I were in the position to make a decision for this, I'd give them the green light too, because frankly, I think both of these, I think most of these companies actually will be broke in a few years, so may as well just let them have their last chance to keep going on the business that could make a little bit more money for them, and let them pivot.
Or let them go broke, and then President Harris buys the remains of Dish EchoStar and creates the federal 5G network that has super cheap prices. No, that won't happen, but I think it'd be fun.
I don't see that happening for other reasons.
We don't do that here.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
So let's see. I'm actually going to switch around the order of things just to get this one out of the way. But speaking of things that probably, or rather will be shutting down, Juicebox EV, or rather the owner who created this product, NLX Way, I guess. I'm not really sure how this is supposed to be pronounced. They are shutting their doors, and as a result, the Juicebox product is going to be a little bit less useful pretty soon. So for those who don't know, this is basically just a charging hub that you can install on your house, and it's used for charging electric vehicles. Juicebox, for the most part, it was a fairly, I don't know how popular of a product it was, but I've heard of it a few times. It seemed like it was a pretty decent idea. It's basically a connected charger. You could control a few settings, like when charging is allowed. You could control what vehicles it's allowed to connect to, things like that. And it basically just put a charging box on the outside of your house that was better than running like a long thick cable from your dryer room or whatever all the way out to your car. So, good idea for anyone who's a EV owner. Well, when they are shutting their doors, they're it's used by power companies for their EV plans. Yeah, that too. Though that's on their corporate side, which is a wholly more complicated situation. They're screwing up big time as far as I can tell. So, one of the messy things here is they're going to be killing the app that's used to control the juice box. And in the Verge article, they point out, let me paste that in. In the Verge article, they point out that once the app goes dead, then the chargers will still continue to work with cars. That part's entirely true. What doesn't get mentioned, and I'm not really clear on this, well, I'll get to that part in a second, but you've been able to do a few things like set charging schedules. You can see the energy usage. You can lock down the charger, and things like that. So one of the features that I saw mentioned is that you can set who is allowed to use the charger. What I can't find is anything to suggest that once the app goes dead, that you will still be able to allow or control who is allowed to charge on that charger. If that's the case, then one of two things happens. Either the charger eventually becomes useless as you get new vehicles or a new person moves into the house or whatever, or they would have to unlock the ability and allow basically anyone to charge from it, which means anyone who wants to could come along and charge off of your power during the day or night or whenever. This doesn't sound great. This sounds actually really, really like a big problem, and I don't think they're making any efforts to fix it. So, yeah, I'm seeing this as one of those things that they screwed up pretty big time. And I feel like this is also going to be one of those things that really strikes a big hole in people's trust of EVs. Obviously, there are other companies doing stuff like this. This isn't the only one. But it seems Juicebox was popular enough or well enough known that this is affecting a fairly significant number of EV owners. I wonder how many of them are going to be looking at this and wanting to see more stable companies getting involved, or might not, or maybe this might interfere with people's feelings about EVs for a while and kind of set us back again. I don't know. It just feels like this isn't the kind of thing that anyone should want to see happening with the EV market right now.
Yeah, I know there are a couple. I think there are a lot of companies. Well, I shouldn't say a lot because there aren't a lot of companies in this market in general. But there are companies that have built the home chargers that also have a business in running charging infrastructure, or at least have some kind of partnership. Like I know, like EVgo and ChargePoint. I think they both either had like a business where they were selling home chargers, or they had like some like direct partner there. So this might be a problem that doesn't come up much, but it does tie back into the general thing of like we should have like some kind of like mandatory migration plan for all smart home stuff. Like there's not really a reason that this company couldn't find someone else to take over the server part of this, or just make it plug into like smart things and call it a day. Like there's a lot of different things they could have done here, but because all those cost money and presumably they are out of that or just don't want to spend it, none of this will happen because they're not required to.
And Yeah, I mean, completely agreed. There should be. Actually, you know what? I'm starting to think maybe a legally obligated or mandated like failover plan needs to become part of all products or all companies that are in operation. Because I was just thinking about this a couple of, or maybe this was last night. Um, I heard some people, or I was listening to a podcast talking about the HomePod and how once or if Apple ever makes a change that makes the HomePod basically not usable for its current purposes, that just becomes a giant, very heavy, very expensive paperweight. Technically, it has Bluetooth, but it's really bad at that, apparently. So, you know, we've seen plenty of products that have good long lives, honestly, like Google Homes. I think I've heard people suggest that those should be abandoned, and I can't see a reason why. They still work great. But um you know, we one of our biggest problems is e-waste. Maybe we need like some sort of legally mandated situation where if you make a product, if if you're going to ship over a certain number of units, maybe we do need to have like mandatory failover where the product becomes effectively open source if your company ceases to exist. Um, and something like this feels like owners of Juicebox should have a way of turning this into um, a continually usable product even once the company is dead, or out of service, or the company needs to be able to sell the product or sell management of the product off to somebody else, which is the other thing that you suggested. And in any of these scenarios, there should be some way to keep this in operation.
Yeah, and it also ties back into the like right to repair stuff. Like just generally, this stuff shouldn't become breaks, and it's all revolving around the same issues.
Yeah, and it's not like these. I don't know how long Juicebox has been in operation, but it's not like these have been around so long, or sorry, well, both too long and too short of time. They've been around long enough that there is a customer base that obviously exists, but it has been around long enough that any of these things would necessarily go bad by now. And even the ones that could have theoretically gone bad by now, like, who cares? There's plenty that are obviously still in operation. So, you know, it just only makes sense. We need to have the ability to keep these things functioning normally. There's no reason not to. So, yeah. Anyway, I don't. There wasn't much to say on this, but I think it just needed to get said. So let's see. There are two last things. What do you want to do first? Microsoft Xbox thing or Galaxy S24 FE?
We can do the SE because I think I don't have a lot to say about the Xbox, and you just
Okay.
So we can take turns talking.
Yeah, that works.
Of course, I closed this one too.
Oh boy.
Here it is. Okay, so I'll put this in the YouTube chat as well. Oh, you did too. Fuck. Now one of us has to delete it. I'll do it. I'll take it. So the rumors are true. Samsung revealed the Galaxy Tab S10 series, I think, which I have zero commentary about. They're just tablets. They don't really seem that good. Samsung's tablets have been like unchanged basically for the past 5 years or so. It's just a thing they make because like no one else is. So as long as they try like a little bit, they can still sell some. It's really just like them and iPads, and then everything else is garbage. Or I guess, well, the Pixel tablet is fine if you get it at like a good price. I would throw that in the not garbage pile.
Okay.
But besides the tablets, they also showed off the S24 FE Fan Edition. Although I don't know if they ever called it by its full name. I think they just say FE now. The meaning of Christmas has been lost.
Didn't they only ever call one product the Fan Edition? That was the Note that they resurrected after it was blowing up.
Maybe. I feel like it was a little bit more, but maybe. But yeah, so we have our new S24 FE, which if you don't know what's going on with Samsung's product line, I totally understand. The FE is like they're one step below their main Galaxy phones. So this is the upper mid-range phone. So in terms of like design and hardware, these are always like a weird mix between the base Galaxy phone and like the Plus Galaxy phone, but then with worse internals. So this has a 6.7 inch AMOLED screen, which I think is about the size of the Plus. I'm not entirely sure off the top of my noggin. 4,700 milliamp battery. It has an Exynos 2400 chipset, which is interesting because I believe all of the S24 phones in the US and maybe in most other countries are Snapdragon. They have a supposedly custom Snapdragon chip, which I'm sure is like 99% the same chip as all the other phones. So probably worse performance or like some of the other weirdness you get occasionally with the Exynos chips. Like I'm sure it's fine. It's probably still pretty good. But there might be some wonky behavior. It does have, I believe that's three cameras. It has a 50 megapixel wide lens, 8 megapixel telephoto lens, and then a they only has two. I see three cameras. Is one of them like the flashlight or something dumb? So it's 12 megapixel ultra wide, 50 megapixel main, and then 8 megapixel telephoto camera. Okay, so had me worried there. I thought this was going to be another garbage macro. They just love doing that. That's every manufacturer's favorite thing to do on budget phones. Which is a shame because I would like a phone with a good macro. That'd be sick.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, that only happens in China. it's just Xiaomi doing that cool stuff, or Oppo. So this is kind of their new, I say budget phone, but I believe this is $700. Let me see. It's nice of the press release to not have a link to the product on the website. They're doing their job poorly. I have to go to Samsung.com myself. Pre-order. Okay. So it starts at $649, which is a little bit lower than the. Let me see what is the normal S24 start at? S24. So the S24 is $860, and the S24 Plus is $1,000. So if you want cheaper phone with big screen, there you go. Samsung has made the phone for you. And I also didn't see it in the press release, but I assume this has like pretty good software support because it's a more expensive Samsung phone. Okay, here we go. S24 FE will be supported with 7 generations of OS upgrades and 7 years of security updates from the global launch date. So, pretty good. Pretty good. That's about as good as it gets in Android world. So, yeah. decent phone. We'll see how that Exynos does. But I'm guessing most people buying this, they're going to use it for TikTok and Instagram and emails, and it's going to do all those fine.
Yeah. It's a phone.
Mm-hmm. It do be a phone.
Did they... I'm assuming... I don't... Now that I'm thinking about looking for this, did they... Do you know if they did a lot of hype for AI? I'm assuming they must have, right?
Yeah. This has a lot of the same Galaxy AI stuff as the other phones.
Yeah.
So it has the photo editing. It has the like the writing tools and the circle to search and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. You know what? I think I'm actually going to slightly defend them because at least in their press release, the Seamless Galaxy AI Experiences section is relatively small. It's not.
Yeah,
it's not
but
it's not dominating half the press release like it would be on almost every other phone.
But they did put it in the title, so I don't know if I can give them a pass.
Okay,
because I know
this
is what all consumers want, is a premium experience that makes full Galaxy AI capabilities attainable.
Let's give them 2/3 or 1/3 credit. 1/3 credit for not going full AI on this.
All right.
So, are you gonna buy one?
Nope.
Okay.
Whenever I don't really need I don't have a use for an Android phone right now because this whole eSIM nonsense makes it difficult to swap phones. So if I was to buy an Android phone, it would probably just be for like testing apps and, if I need to write Android guides for work or something. So because I sold my my S21, I think it was, I don't have like a modern Android phone anymore. I have like a bunch of old review units that I can't really get rid of because they're all like carrier locked or other things. So that's what I have for testing. So whenever I need a modern Android phone again, I'll probably just get like a mid-range Galaxy A or a Pixel A phone, whatever. Because I wouldn't be anything I'm probably going to use for my main phone, because again, that's difficult now. Which I'm sure is partially on purpose, between everyone involved.
Oh boy. Yeah, I'll leave that one alone.
Meanwhile, I was living you don't know when you leave the good times until you've left them. And that's what I think about when I remember that I had a review unit that came with an AT&T SIM card, and that SIM card lasted for, I kid you not, like 4 or 5 years. It was incredible. It was some like garbage LG budget phone. But I remember when I reviewed it at Android Police, it wasn't like activated right. And then when I asked the PR person about it, they were like, "Oh, that's weird. We'll send you a new SIM card." And I guess that one was just like special or something, or got put in the system wrong or something, because that thing lasted for forever. I ended up using like OnePlus phones, and I had an international Galaxy S10e specifically because they were dual SIM, so I could have my normal phone number and the illegal AT&T SIM card that never got turned off as the data SIM, and it was great. I love that. And then one day it stopped working. It was very sad, and I can't find it now because Twitter is broken. I locked my account, but I did post a video on Twitter doing the salute as I dumped the SIM card in the trash.
Not that it's all that directly related, but you're reminding me of the one T-Mobile phone, the only phone I've ever gotten to review on AP. That without getting into too much detail, let's just say it's not a review I actually even really agreed to do. It just kind of got thrown at me. And again, for T-Mobile, which is the one carrier in this area that isn't in this area. And so literally I set up the phone in my house, and I thought, oh, weird. The SIM card did not provision. I have no service. And for a little bit I thought, okay, this kind of sucks. I guess I'm going to have to take it into a store or something. And then so I eventually drove towards town, and I started getting service. It started working. Just turns out, and I had a suspicion this would be a problem. In fact, this is why I actually tried not to get the review in the first place. Yeah, I get absolutely zero T-Mobile service in my house. So that review was pretty much just, let's just pretend that I get service. And for all the screenshots, I actually drove into the city so that I could have screenshots showing that I actually had signal. That was dumb. That was such a dumb situation. And especially because part of the point of the review was to test T-Mobile's 5G network on their, semi first party Revel phone. Oh, that was such a dumb review. But hey, to its credit, it did function. That's the most I can say, is that their network did function when I was close enough to it. Anyway, so moving on from that absurdity, the final topic, Xbox. Now that I have one, the news, the topics of Xbox are creeping into the discussion more and more. Yeah, it's real, not because of that. But Microsoft...
That was me after I got my Xbox. I was like, oh, I should pay attention to the games coming out now.
Yeah.
I have this thing now for games.
Yeah, well, evidently games are not coming out for the Xbox the way that Microsoft thinks they should be. Because they are asking game developers, why you no like us? We're in this too. We're just like Sony, but the other company. And game developers are apparently saying, new phone number, who dis? So yeah, Xbox research is asking game developers why they're not building games for Xbox. I just find this to be such a amusing subject. Don't require XSS day one. I mean, that's something like that. So yeah, they're trying to reach out to various studios and developers, asking what is the issue. And Microsoft is, at least in this article, it's fairly clear that they're trying to frame it as that they think maybe their tools aren't up to snuff, or maybe they have other technical hurdles. And look, I'm just gonna say it out of the gate. It's the same thing I've been saying for, let's see, how long has it been since they announced the X and S, the series? Whatever the dates are.
Came out in 2020, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. Though I think they announced them in 2019. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, I remember saying it when they announced them, and I hold to this belief and this theory to this day. Microsoft screwed up by creating two consoles. It's not one console with different power levels. It's two consoles. Developers do not want to target two separate consoles when they're building their games. Look, I'm sure some of them are out there going, oh yeah, we just turned down the graphic quality and, capped the frame rate, and we did this and we did that. And look, yeah, the Series S wasn't that big of a deal. There are other developers who are like, yeah, no, this took us an extra several months to build a game that we could have released earlier, but we've been performance tuning so that we can release it on the Series S, which is something Microsoft requires. That's the mistake. Game developers who want to target the Series X they were required to support the Series S. And that is a terrible strategy, because it means that you have to try to performance target two separate consoles. This is the exact same reason why a lot of developers don't support the Switch. They build a game for the two high-end consoles that are not identical in performance, but you want to build for the PS5 and the Series X, they're similar enough. They can both produce fairly comparable graphics quality. If one's a little better than the other, okay, so be it. But then when Nintendo's like, hey, bring your game to us, those developers are sitting there going, yeah, but that means we're going to have to spend like months doing the opposite of a remaster. I mean, it's the same as a remaster, but it's the opposite. We have to screw up everything to make it bad enough to play on your crappy system. And Microsoft came along and was like, no, we want to make it mandatory for you to do that on every game you make for us. That was a terrible strategy. I get what they were trying to do. They wanted to put out a console that was super low cost, that was accessible to everybody. And they screwed up. Sorry, but that's what happened. And from the comments that Microsoft has made, it is very clear. It is abundantly clear. That is exactly what they don't understand. And I think they're pretty unwilling to hear that message. But I'd bet almost anything we at least not immediately, maybe someday it'll happen again, but I would have bet almost anything we're never going to see Microsoft make this mistake again. I'm pretty sure that whatever comes next, it is going to be one model until all the people who screwed up on this decision have long since passed away, and it's new Microsoft employees who can make this bad decision again. There you go. That is my theory.
Yeah, I mean, I talked a little bit about this in my blog post about the PS5, where when I posted it to the PlayStation Reddit, everyone called me names. But I basically said, like, if consoles are moving to a point where they're basically smartphones, and they have the upgrade cycle of smartphones and the multi-generational lifespan of smartphones, then yeah, just do, like, just be iPhone, where, like, there's a new Xbox, it comes out, and then the next Xbox comes out and it's more powerful, and the old one is now the cheaper budget option. And then just do that every, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, however long it takes for you to have, like, a meaningful improvement. Mm-hmm. Definitely not yearly. Let's not do that.
No.
Like, I already feel like it's not a good time for game devs right now, where, like, if I'm releasing a game and I want it to be on this generation and the last one, with all of the, like, pros and the S option, that's like 10 hardware configurations I have to test against, ideally. Mm-hmm. So let's not make this more frequent. Let's just switch it so it's fully a smartphone lifespan. That seems like the ideal situation here.
Actually, what you just said is kind of, I never really counted it out in my head, but that is actually true. If you're trying to support it, let's not talk about it as a today problem, but let's talk about it as, like, something that happened in 2020 when all the new generation consoles were just coming out. If you released a game back then, you were targeting, just within Microsoft's ecosystem, you were probably targeting the Series X, the Series S, and the Xbone. With Sony, you were targeting the PS5, the PS4, and the PS4 Pro.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Well, Sony had that
Ideally,
same
you're
requirement. Anything that came out
yeah.
for the PS4 and or everything that came out for the PS4 generation had to work on both.
Right. Yeah, like they probably need, I imagine they should be testing on both, but also like I imagine a lot of them just making the PS4 version and then
Yeah.
like that's what the pro people get.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
we're not going to deal with this right now.
I think by and large, a lot of the time the PS4 I think mostly just upped the frame rates or gave you like they might have had like extra higher quality like textures or something that they would load up just in the PS4 Pro. The advantages of the PS4 Pro definitely were maybe a little on the dubious side. So that's just across two ecosystems. That's 6 different machines. Then throw in Switch if you actually want to downgrade to that. And then there's PC version, which if you're doing a PC game, you're now you're in a whole nother mess of like supporting high-end cards, lower end but still powerful enough to run most games situations, and then like maybe even on the low end systems you might have a whole other configuration. So yeah, you really could kind of be in the tested across 10 different machines scenario. And look, game studios, some of them have the money for that, a lot of them don't. Like and it sounds like, oh, what's so hard about testing across 10? Man,
You gotta buy dev kits.
well, dev kits for all of the consoles, yes, but not only that, you also have to throw in hours of testing. You have to do so much testing time, and it's not just testing, it's compilation time. People always joke about compile times, and in reality, like if you're building most relatively modern apps and software, compilation time isn't crazy. But when you consider the amount of time that goes into building and testing something on a game level, like the games that are going into this, resource compilation alone is actually a really long process. So yeah, you don't just make a tweak and then like hit compile, and 3 minutes later it loads up on the dev kit. Like this takes, I honestly don't have times. I don't know what the times are, but I'd be willing to bet your turnaround on performing any particular test is probably closer to like 20-30 minutes before you even get to start. And once you start, you have to run through various benchmarks and tests to see how everything's going to perform.
Yeah, and to Kirby's point, who said we're 4 years into this gen and they're still supporting Xbox One, PS4. The alternative option is that with some games, if like they're just not that graphically demanding, you make them for Xbox One and PS4, and then everyone else runs it in forwards compatibility. I've seen a lot of games do that, and yeah, I'd probably do that if like my game worked okay on an Xbox One. I'm like, heck yeah, I'm making one version. Which again is like the age-old game platform trick. Like why every single like why the Commodore 128 failed, and like everything Atari made after the 2600. It's like, when you have the backwards compat and the newer thing doesn't have a big market share, you're making one version that runs on both. Like you're just not going to deal with this.
That said, also I'm just going to call out the I've seen so many people say this, but force people to upgrade. Wow. No.
It's like
that a lot of people just don't have the money for it.
This is what conservatives say about guns. Obama's going to come to your house. He's going to take your PS4, but will not leave a PS5. We don't have the budget for that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you cut off the old platforms, like I know that I know Cosmo was definitely not on like the older platforms, but Cosmo's I think a great example. A lot of kids just don't have the money for it. If they got a console near the end of the last generation, because that's how a lot of kids end up getting them, especially if that's just the time period that's kind of right for them to get a game console. The new one comes out, say 6, 9, 12 months later. If their family doesn't have the money for the console, like that's it. They're not going to see that new console for a long time, if ever.
There's two things here. Number one, nothing's stopping the game developers from only making for the newer platform. So they're doing it older because there's a incentive to do that, which is you have a larger install base. Yeah. And the other part, which I think is we learned from Microsoft with the Xbox 360, is that if you want backwards compatibility to keep working, you kind of need to have a lot of the older console infrastructure running already. So like, just keep it run. Like Xbox 360s, like the store for that kept working until like a couple months ago, because like all that stuff kind of needed to stay working for the Xbox 360 backwards compat on Xbox One. And also I think all of the like Xbox Live features are still work on there, because like those definitely need to be there for like achievements to work and stuff in the backwards compat. So like in theory everyone wins, like just by keeping the old hardware alive. Like maybe the new game stopped coming out at a certain point, but it just generally seems to be a good thing. And you could say the same thing about like PCs, where the most popular GPU in the Steam hardware surveys for years was the 1060.
Yeah.
Like people also like are just slow to upgrade the PC stuff too. And game developers end up having to support the old hardware for the same reasons. Like, well, how many people do you want to play your game? What's the addressable market you're looking for?
Yeah.
Well, and we've seen that with Switch, where there's a lot of games that just it's not going to work on there. So game developers like, no, we're not going to try that. We're leaving that one behind because that just can't work anymore. And that will eventually happen with Xbox One and PS4, and it has happened with a lot of games.
Yeah, and we've seen this with this same discussion happens a little bit less with iPhones, though certainly there too. But it happens with Android, or used to certainly happen with Android all the time. Every developer would sit down saying, well, I'd like to support X number of devices, but the only way I can do that is I got to go back and support back to such and such version of Android. And that's the thing. If you want to support, or if you want a large install base, you're not going to be able to get there by supporting just the latest version of Android, or even the latest 2 to 3 versions. You might have to go several versions back. And that's consoles. Honestly, that's a much easier discussion to have. But with supporting anything, you're gonna get a larger potential install base the further back you support.
Yeah, so I'm eventually the market will decide to move on from the older consoles. But again, like back to the smartphone thing, like that's turned into the super cheap budget thing. You can go to the store down the street and get an used Xbox One for $50 or something, and that's a console that can run a lot of newer games, and that's nice. Because I might have $500 to blow on the stupid new box, but not everyone does.
Yeah. And to be fair, generally speaking, I can't point to very many scenarios where it's funny because I've got someone's particular argument in mind, but I can't point to very many scenarios where it actually hurts anyone that the older platforms are still being supported. The game studio, they make the same sale whether it's for a game running on PS4 as they do on PS5. It's still a sale. A sale is a sale. If it's a $50 game, they make the same profit off of it. And likewise, Sony makes the same profit off of that. They don't care. They just it doesn't actually matter to them. The weird thing is, I remember being in an argument a few weeks ago with someone after the PS5 Pro announcement, where their position was that game studios were, or the games were being made worse because older systems were still being supported. And that was a weird argument to me. I mean, it can be true, but it can also be very false. And it's weird because this also turned into a reason why the PS5 Pro was a bad thing. It was a very disjointed argument. But yeah,
just because the console is there doesn't mean you have to make games for it.
No. And
if I'm making a new Fallout game, well, that's a bad example because it's a first party game.
Yeah.
If I'm making a new FIFA GTA game, Sony is not coming to my house and holding a gun to my head and say, make it for the PS4. They won't do that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because literally the premise of my argument about the Microsoft thing is they literally were saying, hey, we've got a Series S, you have to make, right. If you want it on the Series X, you have to support the Series S too. So, yes. If anything, I would say Microsoft was directly guilty of exactly that, whereas so far Sony isn't.
Yeah, I mean, even then, it's also like, then the developer can just be like, all right, no Xbox version. So, yeah, it's kind of an argument, kind of not, but yeah, I think people are just very silly about this, and at a certain point, it veers into like weird elitism or like some weird form of like buyer's remorse, where it's like, oh, I spent $500 on my box. Why do the people with the $50 box still get the same games? This is bullshit.
Yeah, there is some gatekeeping there, but and for the most part, I would even say, look, this is also a decision that every game studio or developer can make. Like, if they decide we only want our game to be accessible on the highest end systems, okay, we can't do that with Microsoft because they have their rule, but we can do it on Sony. They'll let us do a PS5 exclusive, or at least I think they allow that. So yeah, if they want to ship something that's a PS5 exclusive, they can do that, I think. So yeah, it's an option.
I don't know if a PS5 Pro exclusive.
Or sorry, I meant PS5 Pro exclusive.
Okay.
I keep saying that. I have the hardest time remembering to fit Pro in.
I don't know if they have that rule yet.
Yeah, I really don't know if they're allowing exclusives for just the PS5 Pro, but hypothetically, if that is a thing, let's just say it is a thing, then game developers will have that option. If they don't want that option, I'm sure they can, probably approach the companies and say, look, you want our game, you're going to let us build it only for the highest end system. And if it's a relevant enough developer, or even a game that looks relevant enough, I don't doubt for a second both Microsoft and Sony will argue about it for a minute and then say, nah, we want it. We'll do it. We'll find a way. We'll make it work. We'll just tell customers, sorry, but your older systems just aren't, or your weaker versions or whatever, are just not going to cover this. If a game developer wants to cut themselves out of the market to that extreme so that they can have a higher end game, they'll make it happen. And if they can't make it happen, then they'll ship it just to PCs on Steam, and that'll be a thing where you can only play it if you've got a 4080.
And then the PC gamers will whine and be like, why can't I play this on my Steam Deck? The developers are trash.
They'll say that, and so be it. Let it be said.
No, gamers have no self-awareness. Also, the flip side to stuff being supported for longer is that the new expensive box you buy will also have a very long lifespan. So like,
Yeah.
part of my calculus for buying my Xbox Series X was like, I wanted a thing that's not a PC. I'm not at my desk all the time because I'm already at my desk all the time. But it's also like, okay, if I buy the higher end box, based on how the Xbox One is going, that thing's lasting, I don't know, it probably gonna get games 8 or 10 years from now. It won't be the best games, but like, based on how Xbox One is going, it came out in 2013. It's still getting a lot of games, and it's still, the games that already, the ones it had are still working fine. That's that's factoring into my, well, I'm gonna get X amount of, how long is this lasting for my dollar, right? If I'm trying to plan this out. So, that's the nice side of this. And in theory, if it's still working well, that should keep the resale value up to a decent amount. It's still going to tank a lot because it's a console, and that just seems to happen with this product category. But like, that's generally a trend, is the longer a tech device lasts, the stronger resale value it has.
Yeah. Or at least after it's established a pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. So just a lot of good reasons to do it this way. And if game devs, nothing's stopping them from dropping the old consoles, but they're still supporting it because there's still a market there if it's feasible. And this is also how it's always worked. It was just more about, it was happening quicker because the technology was evolving more rapidly. But now we've reached game plateau, and there's just not huge advancements anymore. The Xbox One can still run Fortnite because that game also has to work on phones. So
yeah,
there you go.
Oh, but yeah, so the gaming industry is screwed.
I like my box.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the assorted complaints I have about the Series S.
I wish my box worked with my USB headphones. Other than that, I do like the box.
Yeah. Plus, I have developed a new complaint about the Xbox controller. Specifically, going right back, there will be no end to the complaints about where the D-pad is versus the thumbstick on the left side. I've now found I hit the D-pad a lot when my thumb is on the thumbstick, because like thumb hanging half off the thumbstick as I'm like trying to move backwards or something, and the other part of my thumb hits the D-pad. Like, I can literally hold both down at the same time with just my thumb, and that's driving me kind of crazy. It's funny because I play a lot, or when I'm playing Overwatch, it's funny how often all of a sudden the wheel of like sprays or emotes just comes up while I'm in the middle of a fight. So
you need like a, like the glass that goes over the like nuclear detonation button. You need that for like the D-pad area. Little protective shield you have to flip up to press the D-pad.
Yeah, that might actually have to be a thing. No, so anyway, yeah, it's still a decent box. It gets the job done. But yeah, anyway, so I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on this? Okay, neither do I. So I think that is a good spot to wrap it up. Let's see, because you said you didn't want to be on for too long, and I've now managed to keep you here almost 2.5 hours, and I want to give my voice a rest. Plus I probably have work I should get done. We'll see if that happens. So let's see. do we have anything to pitch or talk about other than that?
No, just go to spacebar.news and read things and share them if you like them. I did a post recently about 20 dead Mozilla projects. And I thought I was being clever calling it the Mozilla Graveyard, and then I found out someone made a Mozilla Graveyard website in the style of the Google Graveyard website. But there is not the same overlap between that website and my article. So, that's fun. I found other things.
Interesting.
Mostly, I clicked the Mozilla category or the Mozilla tag in TechCrunch, and I scrolled backwards for about 10 years and found a lot of stuff. I was like, oh, I forgot they did that. Did you know Mozilla announced an Android launcher that just never came out? I totally forgot about that.
Actually, I do remember that.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it was covered.
I didn't know it never came out. I just didn't.
Yeah.
I remember the announcement. I just didn't know it didn't come out. I was never going to use it.
Yeah. So that's a fun thing you can read. Also, that article doing pretty well on Google Discover. Google's been pushing that. It'd be really funny if there was an ulterior motive there with Mozilla. But yeah, so go read that.
All right, so
also read the game consoles article that made the gamers angry.
I mean, everything makes them angry.
It's true. The things people will do so they can be mad all the time. I could never.
You could.
I mean, I'm mad all the time, but it's not it's about things that I think matter. It's not about which box someone has or whether or not there's women in a video game. The things they yell about the most.
Oh, I don't know that. I don't know where to go from this, so I'm just going to escape it. So let's see. As for myself, I will be back this weekend for some gaming. Probably a bunch of Fall Guys, hopefully some Overwatch. And of course, we'll be back next week for some RambleCasty goodness. For those who would like to support the channel, there are links down below to Cash App, Streamlabs, and Patreon. And huge thanks to Kirby Mermaid, David, Austin, Carson, and Diablo. Y'all are awesome for supporting the channel. And yeah, I think that about covers it. So I will see all of you in Discord. And what the? Huh. All of a sudden, the music just skipped around and acted real weird. But anyway, I will catch you all next time. So have a good week, everybody.
Bye.